Well, I think it's sort of, when you just in your room, you've got no nice tablecloth or something. It's just punk there, and then they give you a drink of tea, and you don't want that straight away. You want that after, and that, so sometimes it works that way, and then sometimes you get everything and it's all, there, and that. But sometimes it would be nice when you go down for a meal, instead of having just formica, you could have a nice tablecloth, as though you're at home rather than in a hospital environment.
I think the time of day is really important, and making it a bit of a sacred space so that people aren't coming in and out and making it like a train station. I think really valuing it and having the right environment to help people with their eating and drinking. So I know for some of the patients that have got concentration or attentional problems, sitting in a noisy bay where people are clanging and walking past, where they're getting distracted away from what they're eating, or ensuring we've got the right portion size, perhaps even eating at the right time of the day. I mean, how often do we put people in a hospital environment or a care home environment where they perhaps never ate breakfast, or they'd eat their main meal at 9 o'clock at night?
I think from a psychological perspective, it's all about creating that environment that someone wants to be in. So thinking about how we can make it a warm environment, thinking how we can make it more welcoming, and make it somewhere that people actually want to participate in. So just little aspects like putting tablecloths on or putting some little flowers in the middle of the table, just to create that bit more of a homely environment. And because for a lot of people, the hospital can be quite a scary environment, somewhere where they don't necessarily want to be in. So by creating that warm environment, it really helps people to participate. Mm-hmm.
Something around documentation of how patients are eating and drinking and where we document it, and the level of detail that we go into. Often we find that it's very brief, and actually it doesn't talk about, did they need assistance, were they able to do anything themselves, what level of help did they need, did they fatigue, all those things that they struggle with, we don't ever actually comment on in the documentation.
It's about the holistic care for the patients, and what we need to be improving is the individual care plans, the quality of our individual care plans, and not only having good assessment and good planning, but actually the implementation of it.
Yeah.
The better the care plan to start with, the more chance we have of implementing good practice, and that's what we need to do. We need to implement what we intend.
And also I found as well with I had to put notices up to say, is this gluten-free? Because a lot of people didn't know, and I didn't think they understood. I said, I can't have that, I'll be poorly. And I don't think they understood the problems at all. Even the nurses, a lot of them didn't understand. I have to say every time, is this porridge gluten-free?
Yeah.
And then sometimes they said, oh, I don't know. So we had to go back.
And
so
check.
then it was another half an hour before I got me breakfast. Yeah. Oh, it was good because I could, people had said, about going on a holiday, and then I say, well, I could spend time in France, I could speak really good French, but at the moment I can't, and we're talking about France and all the places we've been to, and it's good, it passes the time, and it's very good for your brain, because you're not just sat there thinking, oh, I watched telly, and that you've got your voice, and that you've got to think about your conversation, and that, because I think the thing with aphasia, you're not doing just the talking, you're having to learn other words, so your brain has to say it first and then you have to speak it. So whereas before you wouldn't think about it, you just do it. But you know, so the aspect of having little groups is good. But
it was good because everybody talked, and also when we were in the Hallamshire, they also they had quizzes, so everybody could see how they got on.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a quiz sometimes, and somebody would say, "Oh God, what's this?" And I would say, "I ain't got a clue what's this. I can't read, so I don't know what he's talking about." And everybody was laughing and saying, "I can't do this. I can't do this. Oh God, I'm awful." So
there was a bit of camaraderie.
Yeah, and it was nice because and then there was sometimes when they have a meeting where you talk about when you had a stroke, and then the person, depending on your speech and all the rest of it, can talk about it and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But mine was simple, to say the least. But at least that's what I said, what I thought anyway. If it's a quiz or someone else or something, we had football when England played, and they had all the countries and all the rest of it, and everybody's going, and it was funny when everybody was saying, and somebody said, so you've got the it's Brazil. So, Christ, I got it correct. Oh, yeah. Is that England then? Can I get England then? Because I know that. Yeah. And everybody laughed, and said,
yeah.
And then he got Germany. He said, "Oh." Somebody said, "Oh, we had a war." Nah. And they said when the football was on, it was nice because everybody said, "Oh, go on. Oh, the football. Did you watch the football?" "Yeah, I watched the football. Yeah." "Oh, England were great. Yeah." "Germany, oh, they're still there." and it was just nice to chat.
Yeah.
But the good thing is when the students were there, everybody came alive.
Yeah.
And they were chatting and all the rest of it, and this was good.
Yeah, to be involved in conversation and get that kind of nice social mealtime experience.
But I think there's still a natural human instinct of a social gathering and a meal and sharing a meal being a social gathering, and I think that's good from a psychological point of view for our patients rooms. So from the point of view of social human interaction and doing a normal activity when you're in an institution and sitting and eating with other people, I think that on its own is a really good thing.
Eating and drinking is something that we do for pleasure and as a social activity, and if we don't have that can really negatively impact quality of life. And we know that all the evidence says as well that patients actually both with swallowing difficulties and communication difficulties can have significantly reduced quality of life, and it's about that kind of lack of social interaction, especially people with swallowing difficulties. For the purpose of the breakfast group, that we know that people with swallowing difficulties often feel embarrassed about their eating and drinking. They might not get the opportunity to do that with other people because what they're eating and drinking is more limited. So actually if we can have that designated space for them to and also to meet other people like themselves, because I think people feel very alone in their difficulties and can become quite low. So seeing that there are other people also struggling with the same things and engaging with one another, I think would be really valuable. I think that kind of social interaction really that is so hard if you're just lying in your bed on a stroke unit all day, that it's kind of designated time for people to kind of come together and sit around and have a chance to talk to other people, to hopefully feel more motivated to eat and drink, because eating and drinking with other people is more motivating and stimulating rather than just kind of lying in your bed or sat out in a chair by yourself.
I think it'd be helpful, because then if somebody can help somebody else, like Tim couldn't undo the butter and the jam, but somebody might have been able to use both the hands to do it, and then they can help each other and support each other, whereas Tim was just left on his own, and then they're just getting frustrated, which is the last thing they want, because then the body's all tensing up and it's not relaxed.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a more joined up approach to eating and drinking, and I think that involves a wider sort of MDT involvement, assessments at meal times. So at the minute I think it's quite limited to mainly speech and language therapists that will assess at meal times, and I don't think we see meal times as an opportunity for one, assessment, but two, actual rehab. So I think there's a huge opportunity and potential for that.
You mentioned multidisciplinary team. Which of the multidisciplinary members do you think should be involved in breakfast groups?
I think it's everyone's responsibility. Each profession has a role to play. I think the best model would be a joint approach, so whether you had a rotating sort of schedule of, it might be an OT and a nurse for a couple of days or a week, and then it's swapped to maybe a speech and language therapist and a support worker. I think to change is hard, and to keep momentum and sustain it moving forward, we have to have buy-in from everybody. And I think if everybody had the opportunity to be involved in some aspect, I think it'll go a long way in terms of keeping it up, and keep it going for the long term, really. So I do think it's everyone's responsibility.
I think as a therapist we need to be thinking about what is that person's goals and aims, which health professionals or therapy assistants would help meet that need. Are we looking at swallowing? Are we looking at upper limb function? Are we looking at the correct sequence of being able to eat a meal or butter bread? Are we looking at raising mood? So what is it we're wanting to get out of that group for that individual? The number in the group to make it therapeutic, making sure we've got the right number of staff, because often, especially in the early stages, we might need one therapist or one therapy assistant per patient, and that might need a bit of thinking about. So sometimes I think less is more. The staffing, what's on the menu, what that person would usually eat, how we might modify it for a specialised diet while still making it tasty and enjoyable. Speech therapists and dietitians have got wonderful ways of doing that. Or maybe it's about the patient walking with the physio and being able to stand to use the toaster. So it's about the right staff, whether the patients who are going to come together are going to gel, the right time of day, and also the right equipment. There are pieces of equipment that can make it easier for a patient to manage without looking disabled and giving them dignity, and it's having the availability of that is also helpful as well.
And it's a really good opportunity to get a few patients in one room. It's really handy for us as staff to for joint working, for speech therapists to work with OTs and physios and kind of optimise positioning for patients, work out what any kind of compensatory strategies or things to do with feeding, ways that we can better support them to feed themselves, to kind of build independence. So really good for joint working, really good for a speech therapist as well, seeing a few people at once as well. Like you can go to a breakfast group and observe a couple of people having something to eat and drink, and kind of watch and see how they get on.
Well, it's having the right amount of people to support. That's the crucial thing. So if you've got a table of 4 where everybody's needing a lot of help. You might have a table of 4 that doesn't need as much. You need to perhaps assess people before you put the people together, so you've got different abilities.
And what we need to be thinking about is identifying people who are going to benefit from it, are going to contribute to it, are going to be comfortable being there. You know, people who are really struggling with coming to terms with the fact that they've had a stroke and not wanting to interact with other people. We need to look at which of that group are going to benefit from being in with other people, and it's going to bring them on, and which of it may actually set people back. That they'll be uncomfortable and horrified with being in a group of other people. So it's an individual thing for every patient here, depending on their own expectations, their own culture around eating at home, how important it is, whether food is simply a fuel or whether it's a pleasure. So you've got a complex layer there which is quite diverse. We probably need to improve our understanding of what it is they like to eat, what they're able to eat. Certainly for some patients it's about what's culturally they're comfortable with. And there are some groups that we're much more aware of this than others. People from certain religious backgrounds, we tend to be aware of that. But for example, people from a West Indian background who may just have a different tradition of what they eat at home. I've had some comments there, and that we're probably not culturally sensitive enough there. So we need assessment about the physical capabilities for people. We need to know what they like to eat and drink. And then it's about working with an individual about, have they got the right tools to eat? Do they need different knives and forks? Do they need a plate guard? Do they need something, something to wear? Are they comfortable doing that? And very importantly, things like portion size, not over-facing people. If something you see quite often, that if you put too much down, people with small appetites, classically you think of the little old lady, and you put a whole plate down, and she thinks, I can't eat that, so they don't eat any of it. Whereas if we put a third of that down, she probably would have eaten all that, and you might then be persuaded to have some sponge and custard afterwards. I think those would be the building bricks of it. But I'm not suggesting we have sponge and custard for breakfast, but if
why
that's
not?
what they'll eat, why not? Exactly.
And by raising that awareness, I think we can begin to normalise some of those difficulties that people experience. And again, just linking it back to raising that awareness that mental health difficulties are really common after a stroke, and that impact can be seen on eating and drinking. I think mealtime groups would be a really beneficial opportunity for people to practice. So whether that be that functional aspect of actually preparing the meal, and also the opportunity to practice the actual process of eating. So I know for a lot of people they might struggle with swallowing difficulties, so it just provides the opportunity to practice all different areas of eating and drinking within a safe environment. I think, again, one of the main things that we should be doing is providing people with that information about the difficulties that they might experience in relation to eating and drinking, because by providing that information to the patients, we're able to normalise some of the difficulties that they might be experiencing, and again, just to help build that confidence and self-esteem, to actually just normalise that this is a normal process.
Yeah, when you have breakfast and you have the toast, and you've got the butter, and the butter is, you've got to peel off the what's it called, the
lid
to get to get it off, and you can't, because I was, all I had was one hand, you see. So what I did was, I was not happy about this. Hit it. So it came out, and I was able to get a bit of it, put it on the bread. Then the jam the same. So I went there. So I had the jam as well. I think when you have a stroke, it'd be nice if you had the everything simple.
Yeah.
Like a simple container where you can just help yourself.
Yeah.
No problems at all.
So yeah.
Because the nurses were so busy helping everybody, and the worst thing is somebody has a shower, and that takes time to do that, you see. So, things like that. And the best thing for them is if it was simple for the person who has a stroke, and then they don't have to mess around. So when you have your toast and you think, oh, the butter's here, right? A little container, something like that, and you have something to scoop it out, put it on, and you can do that yourself.
I think for me the main things would be just making sure everyone involved has a real awareness of both swallowing difficulties and communication difficulties as well, because I think both of those things can obviously really impact on a person's eating and drinking experience. So I guess for everyone involved to know if people are on modified diets, and to feel confident and competent in making thickened drinks, for example, and supporting with that kind of thing. For people to kind of have a bit of an idea of kind of the signs of aspiration, and how to support someone with a swallowing difficulty. And also, if someone has a communication difficulty, kind of liaising with maybe speech therapy or the people who know that patient beforehand to kind of work out how's best to support that patient's understanding to kind of get the most out of that group time, so that it can be used to really fulfill its kind of social potential as well. And to support if someone is then going to practice making a hot drink, knowing how to make communication accessible so that they understand the task. I think for patients' communication difficulties, it'd be kind of having access to certain resources and things that might help somebody to understand things, maybe some picture resources. And I guess having an understanding of kind of how to carry out supported conversation as well, so that people with communication difficulties can also participate in the group and interact with others and get things out of it socially as well.
It is that every patient has a personalised plan, that we discuss with the patients their likes and dislikes. We discuss what their eating habits were pre-stroke, and that we really try and make their meal times and what we're giving them here as personal as possible. And that's documented very clearly somewhere, so that people going in who don't know the patient as well can see it at a glance and they're like, right, I know what's happening. And that's also documented very clearly in the patient records as well, so that we've got a clear audit trail, and we're seen to be discussing these points. It's about offering patients the opportunity, I guess, to be involved in any aspect of that meal prep. Is there something we can do, particularly at the breakfast? Can they come and do aspects themselves? And so that they're working on that towards going home, reducing the amount of care and long-term support that they're going to need, and actually, achieving their goals. I think it's around, making sure that we clearly communicate what's important to that patient and how they're eating and drinking, that we've got different assessment resources and an assessment tool, or something to support assessments at meal times that everybody can use, and that there's a bit of almost like a toolkit of things that they can whip out, and if they think, oh, that patient is that they are going to struggle with using specific cutlery, that we've got other cutlery they can try, and that being readily available. I think there's something around meal time, the actual meal itself, and making sure we've got a variety of choices, and that we've got different options for different levels of diets that are going to be appealing to the patient, and that the presentation is really considered, and it not just being all on a plate mushed together.
I think personalised is the main thing. Do we know our patient? What's important to them? When would they eat? How would they eat? What do they like? What's their preference? Has that changed since their stroke? Positioning is really important. Whether they sat in a chair or a bed, or or what kind of chair. I think thinking about what kind of therapy might be the most helpful. So if I'm working on an upper limb, is it that I need a physio there, or is it that I need a dietitian because they're particularly looking at swallowing? And for that to be as valuable as other things we do, I think it's really important. We're not doing it for a nice thing to do, we're doing it as part of their tailored treatment plan. And that is going to be getting them home and working on mood in a way that maybe walking down the ward or practicing in the shower, for that person, that might be the thing that makes the difference. And we recently had a young stroke survivor on our ward, and she loved the breakfast group. It was normal, it was fun. She got something out of it that she didn't get out of any of the other types of therapies. It was different. So for me, good eating and drinking care means making the time for it. Recently in Rotherham, I was lucky enough to sort of join a group that's been run before, and wow, as an OT it just lit me up, and it lit all the staff up. So it was a small group because we had to think about COVID. They had the tablecloth on the table, they had the napkins folded a certain way, they had the butter and the spreads in little glass containers. And when I walked into the room, I just had a real sense of being taken care of. Someone's taken the time to make this beautiful and homely and normal. And the patients that came in, the way they interacted with each other was almost like they'd come from being a patient in bed to being a person again. We talked about holidays, and while the speech therapist is looking at what they could swallow and how they're doing that, there was also this beautiful interaction going on with patients and staff, where the patient status had gone away and we were people talking, and I thought that was magic.